In 2027, we shall have a referendum. If you watch or listen to an interview on Capital FM, Salim Davadi, that is the Prime Cabinet Secretary, said that if Kenyans can vote for 6 positions on one ballot paper, then it is possible to add referendum questions on that ballot box, so that as you vote, you can also participate in a referendum.
I think this election we can also use as the first election where we can have some critical constitutional issues that have never been resolved. We can have a referendum going side by side.
Side by side?
Yes.
Is it manageable?
Oh yes, why not? If you can vote for 6 people on one ballot paper, I think we are now mature enough to include maybe 2 or 3 constitutional questions that can be dealt with, so that as Kenyans we move forward, because we don't want to have arguments constantly on some issues that we know Parliament may not want to
like what?
But the issue is, what will Kenyans be voting on for the referendum? Now, before Raila passed on, there was a PG, that is the parliamentary group that brought UDA and ODM together. And I remember in Raila's speech, he said that we have so many counties and Kenya is a small country, and having so many counties is counterproductive. It's not good for our economy. So we are reaching a level where we are like, we have so many counties, we can have regional governments to avoid a situation where there's too much duplication and too many units that are costing us economically. I didn't really get the economic argument Raila had around that, because in Raila's argument, he said that we can maintain counties the way they are and also have a 3rd tier. Now, if you have a 3rd tier, in his argument, these counties will not be taking money away from us. Instead, we shall have powerful regional governors. So these counties will be operating like, sort of like districts. You know how districts have been operating? Yeah. And also in his argument, he says that, you know, if you look at the 2010 constitution, we're not supposed to have these other administration county commissioners. So in his argument, you know, if we go this route where we have regional governors, we shall do away with that. But this is something that needs to be understood in a better way, and I think we need a conversation about that. And personally, I'll go deeper to really find out if we have a 3rd tier government, like we have the first one where we have the national government, we also have counties, but these counties are weak to some extent, and we have regional governments. I need to understand the economic argument around that, because what people are saying is that when we have such kind of government system, we shall have duplication of duties. That's the argument people are having. And also people feel that more resources will be needed to run this 3rd level of government. But in Raila's argument, he said, no, that will not happen. So this is something that maybe in my next episode, I'll perhaps get someone with, you know, understanding of governance, policy, and all that, so that they're able to explain this point. So as I mentioned, the likely issue we shall vote on in that referendum is reducing the number of counties and perhaps introducing a 3rd level of government. Another issue that is likely to come up is the issue of, you know, the position of Prime Minister, and also the position of office of opposition leader. Now, if we can have a Prime Minister, and we also have someone who came 2nd in an election, in a very competitive election, where will this person who lost that election go to? There has been an argument around, you know, having the office of official opposition leader. So that is likely to be in that referendum. And there's one thing that Kenyans should also accept, that our elections have never been that peaceful, you know, after an election. Okay, I don't mean that our elections are never peaceful. We can go to our polling stations, vote, but the aftermath, that is after the election, usually things do not go well, because you'll find that the election was so competitive, and people ask, now let's consider the previous election where Ruto won by 7.2 million votes and Raila lost with 6.9 million votes. So people ask, in such a situation where the country was sort of like divided like equally, where we have almost 50-50, and now the winner takes like everything, where will these other people go to? That's why we always have tension after an election, and there's a feeling that if we can have the office of official opposition, it can heal that, or it can address that. And remember this, President Ruto and also President Uhuru have talked about the issue of having the office of official opposition. And even during the handshake between President Ruto and Raila, people like Senator Cherargei, that is Nandi Senator, mentioned the issue of introducing the office of official opposition. So these are conversations that we need to get more information to understand what kind of questions are likely to appear in that referendum. The third issue that I think is likely to be introduced is the extension of term length. Right now, Kenya has a presidential term length of 5 years, that after every 5 years we go into another election to elect the president. And people have been having a conversation, should we extend the term limit of the president from 5 years to 7 years? And not just the president, even for these other offices, to prevent politicking, because there is an argument or a feeling that after every election, immediately we are done with an election, Kenyans still get into campaign mode, where very well that person A has been announced as a winner of an election. And then after that, you declare that you will be running in the next election, and you start campaigning. You start attending, burial ceremonies, and tell people that in the next election I'll be vying. At a point where we are not even supposed to have that kind of conversation. Instead, we are supposed to have a conversation about delivery of services, because we already have a new government in office. Why then start talking about, an election that is 5 years away? So I don't know if that kind of argument is logical, that if you extend, a term limit, that will end politicking in the country. Politically, it makes sense, but logically, it doesn't make sense. So that is an issue that Kenyans will also have, to vote in that referendum. In general, I don't know if you think Kenya having a referendum question or questions in 2027 will be the right thing. Or do you have a feeling that the referendum and the general election should be done separately? I need your view on that. But in my understanding, having the referendum and a general election separately will be costly. If you just have to look at it economically. And also, if you tell Kenyans to participate in a referendum next year, and then 2027 again, you tell them to participate in a general election, that is likely to cause voter apathy. So to avoid all that, it is necessary you just decide, to put together the general election and the referendum. And truly speaking, these leaders will come out and explain to us if it is the right thing to do. And I have a feeling that Kenya can still have a referendum. It's not the worst of things we can have in 2027. We can still have, a referendum, because there are issues we need to address, like the issue of office of official opposition leader. That is something that is so critical. I know Kenyans would say that, this is a democracy, that whoever wins, it is fine. But you people forget what really happens post polls, after an election and announcement of a winner. This country always is on the verge of, getting into chaos. That is something that we all know. We live in this country. So to avoid such kind of tensions, we can have the office of official opposition leader, so that when the president takes, an oath of office, we can have the office of official opposition leader also taking an oath of office. So that is something that Kenyans should actually participate in deciding if we should follow that route or ignore it. But what I know is that if we avoid, constitutionalizing the office of official opposition leader, we shall definitely continue having problems post-sport. But we can avoid that if we participate in this referendum. But anyway, let's get into 2026, and from there we shall have a conversation about this referendum. I know Musalia Mudavadi, President Ruto, and others will definitely tell us what this referendum is all about. And then from there, Kenyans will have a conversation, and ultimately the country shall decide whether referendum questions should be included or not. But anyway, when you stay here on Owen Raw Podcast, you will always get information that will inform you. And what I want us to do is to have interactions. So on the issue of the referendum, what do you think? Was this something that going forward we need a discourse on? But always make sure that you keep in touch here on Owen Raw Podcast and continue celebrating your Christmas and also happy holidays and prepare for 2026.